Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We just have more people coming in. Good morning, everyone. I am Brianna Rossa, the Office and Events Coordinator for the Small Business Center. And today we have Suzanne Andrews here to discuss on press releases. I would just like to mention too, the Small Business Center will start offering hybrid workshops. This one is a hybrid workshop just because there's no one in person. We're online, but it's nice to get out and see everyone's faces, even if it's just at the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce and see all these lovely people's faces. So today we have Suzanne Andrews. She's the CEO of Quinte West Chamber of Commerce, and she has a background in media relations and news broadcasting. So she essentially oversees all of the press releases that come out of the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce. She used to do them all herself, but now she has passed on some of her responsibilities onto her employees. And she essentially looks over everything and passes on her skills and her knowledge. And today that's exactly what she's going to do to us. So she's going to discuss essentially the effective ways of writing a good press release and having those strong media relations to be having the right contacts, as well as writing a strong press release and different uses that you can use your press release for more than just getting it out to the news. And we're very fortunate to have Suzanne taking the time out of her day on a Friday morning to chat with us about press releases and strong media relations. I will now pass this over to Suzanne Andrews. I'm just going to remind everyone again, just to remain on mute. If you have any questions, please direct them to the chat and we'll be answering them throughout the presentation.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is great. Thank you, Brianna, for the invite to talk about one of my favorite topics. I love communications. A few of you on the call know me, and you know I'm a talker. Like, I love to chat, I love to talk, and I love to build relationships. And very fortunate in my 15 years here at the Quinte West Chamber, I've been able to build a great relationship with our local media, and I'm happy to sort of share some of the knowledge that I have built up over the years through my role here at the Chamber, but also in my prior life as working in broadcasting and working in various communications roles. And I think a lot of the skills that you have as a writing press releases and in general communications and relationship building, you can take them from a variety of different jobs. Not only many of you today maybe own your own business, or you work in work for someone else, but maybe part of your job description is doing some writing or getting some notices out there. So a lot of what we're going to cover today can actually be used in a variety of different ways. So I'm going to do a presentation, and like Brianna said, it is a small group. So I may ask you some questions throughout the presentation instead of saving it all till the end. And you can either use the raised hand symbol if you want to just agree with what I'm saying, or if you would like to unmute and ask a question or answer a question I might ask you, you're welcome to do that. I really would. I love it when it's interactive, and with a smaller group, we get a chance to do that. So I'm going to now go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. So hopefully everyone can see that okay. So the importance of a good press release and media relations, that's what we're talking about today. And, they kind of go hand in hand, because if you haven't taken the time to build up that relationship, sometimes your press release may not get noticed. So they kind of do go a little bit hand in hand with each other. Okay. Okay, now all of a sudden, hold on one moment. It's decided not to work for one moment. Give me a second here. Trying to figure out why this is going to do it from the beginning again. Okay. Of course, we had it working going ahead of time, didn't we, Brianna? Okay, can everybody see that okay now? Brianna, you can see everything okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to start off like, what is a press release, and why is it important that we write them? The Wikipedia definition says that a press release, news release, media release, press statement, or video release is a written or recorded communications directed at members of the news media for announcing something newsworthy. And at all points in history and through all civilizations, people have been sharing news and telling stories. The definition I prefer is a press release is a short, compelling news story sent to targeted members of the media. The goal of a press release is to pique the interest of a journalist or publication. And really that's what you're trying to do with a press release, is really sort of show the media that you have something interesting. And it's really wonderful if they actually pick up your press release and interview you and even do an even bigger story. But at the bare minimum, it should be a way for the media to learn about what it is you're trying to sell to them, or sorry, not to sell them, but the story that you're trying to show them so that they will find it interesting. Has anybody sent out a press release already? Has anybody on the call written a press release or shared a press release at all? Any hands up? I'm not seeing it. Oh, okay. Tony says that he has, and Brianna. Okay, so that's good. So, and Liz says she's had, but with mixed results. And so that's the thing. Sometimes, you do get mixed results with them. And, when you're writing that press release, you got to really keep in mind, what it is that you're trying to accomplish with that press release. So I'm glad to see that some of you have actually written one already. So once you've written your press release, you've got to share it. Content is king. Once written, you should use it in a variety of different ways. You don't have to just rely on the media to tell your story. You can post your press release on your own website, share it on social media platforms, publish it on your blog post, use it to start a conversation in LinkedIn or other groups that you belong to. And so does anybody here have a blog post, or do they write content and maybe share it to LinkedIn or any other types of newsletters or emails that they send out to maybe customers, clients, potential customers? Tony says that he does. So, when you're taking the time that to write a press release and sharing it out with the media, like once it's written, like those, you want to take your time and depending on your amount of experience or how comfortable you are writing. Susan, I know that you like to keep a journal, so you're probably quite comfortable writing things out. But for some people, if they haven't written anything for a while, it may take a while to really kind of get your thoughts focused and get them put down on I'd say on paper, but on your computer. But once you have taken the time to write something, your wordsmithed it, you've checked it for all those things that you need to do to it, don't just use it in one place. Throw it up on your social media, throw it up on your LinkedIn profile if you have one. Maybe there's another group that you belong to, so you can actually use the things that you've written to start a conversation with other people. So I think that's just the most important part about this slide that I want to get out there is don't just use it for one thing. So I see this question like, I'd like to know how to get started. So that's where we're going to go to next. When should you send out a press release? That's the question. What should you do? When should you send out that press release? And the answer to that is whenever you have something truly newsworthy or interesting to share with the public. And it's really important here to note that a press release should not be used to try and sell something. And that's a mistake that sometimes people might make. The media is not interested in running a press release talking about a sale that you have coming up. Unless, as an example, that sale is then going to, all the profits from that sale are going to go to a charity or to, to support something else. So it's really important that, when you're writing a press release, you have to be announcing something or telling them something that is outside of your ordinary order of business. And, if you have something that is really needs to be shared with the public and it has to be done by a specific date, then you might want to consider buying an ad for that. Because when you send out a press release, there is no guarantee that the media will actually use it. So if you're doing it as an example, you've got something happening at your location. Maybe you're doing a big open house for the public and you want them to come and check out your location. And it's a 1-day event. Sending out a press release, the press release may or may not get picked up by the media, depending on how newsworthy they think it is. And so that might be an example where you might want to buy an ad as well. And then that way you can guarantee that it's going to be announced on the radio or in the newspaper prior to your event. Okay. So then you might wonder, like, who should be on your contact list? If you're sending out a press release, who should be on your who should you be on your contact list? And the answer is all local media. You never know who may want to run with your story. So that could include local newspapers, radio stations, online news, community television, your local chamber of commerce, economic development, or other group or organization that could spread your news. So if your business is part of an organization and you've got something newsworthy to share, then you could definitely send that off to your local organization. If you're a member of the chamber, make sure you send it to the chamber, because they can then share it out on their social media, maybe in some of their communications. If you're part of a sector organization, if you're part of, I see Susan's on with the B&B Association. If you're a grocery store and you're part of the National Grocers Association, send it to them. So certainly, who you send it to, it really could be anybody that might want to pick that story up. So make sure that you get the email addresses of those contacts. If you need some help, you can always contact the Chamber of Commerce. We have a local media contact list. And what I do, because we send out so many press releases here at the chamber, we have a group contact set up in our address book, in our email contacts, so that when we want to send out a press release, we don't have to start adding each email address. We already have that group ready to go. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and see, does anybody have any questions about the contact list, who should be in your contact list, any suggestions of other groups or organizations that maybe I've missed that you think should be in your contact list?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you keep it up to date?
The contact list?
Your media contact list. I feel like every time we send out a press release, we triple check that everyone's still there. So how do you keep up to date all the time?
Emails are probably one of the hardest. So if you do get a bounce back, you do need to obviously follow up and phone them and find out, why is this bouncing back? They may have changed their email address. I know for a while there, with our local newspapers, there was so much change, right? We used to have Metroland, and then we had Post Media, and then they were buying out. And I think locally here in the Quinte region, Post Media is our biggest newspaper outlet. They have one newsroom, so it is easy because you send it to one newsroom, but you have they do the Belleville Intelligencer, they do the Trentonian, they do the Community Press, and they do the County Weekly News. So there's one newsroom for all those 4 papers. And then, of course, there is the Picton Gazette, the Wellington Times. There's a few other smaller independent newspapers around. So you would definitely want to include any of them in your contact. And same thing with the radio stations. Quinte Broadcasting, they do Mix 97, Rock 107, and CJBQ. So you've got one newsroom for those 3 stations. Starboard is 95.5, and also Cool 100. So again, you've got one news department for those 2 radio stations. And then you've got UCB, you've got Oldies out of Brighton. There's a 95.5 now out of Picton. And our closest television outlet is out of Kingston. So that we always include them in our press releases as well. Don't forget about Kojiko, our local, Your TV, which covers this region. They're a community television station, and they will sometimes come out to events as well. And of course, and then all of them, whether it's the newspapers or the radio stations, all now have an online news source as well. So we've got Quinte News is the online news place for Quinte Broadcasting. InQuinte.ca is the place for all the Starboard news. The Post Media, the Trentonian, and the Intelligence, so they all have online news as well. So sometimes, like with the radio stations, your story may not actually make it on the air, but it will make it onto that online platform. So that's something to keep in mind too. If your business is in a position where you do place advertising, whether it's with the newspaper or with the radio stations, you probably have a rep that you have that you work with to place your advertising. And it might not hurt to make sure that you include your sales rep also in your media contact, because sometimes if they know there's a story coming, they can make sure it gets picked up. So if you are doing any paid advertising, make sure that you let your rep know, because quite often, like, we have Leanne as our rep here at the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce for Post Media. And Leanne is great at making sure that our business openings get in the newspaper and other things that are not a paid ad. But she makes sure that space is reserved in the paper for something we have coming up. So don't be afraid to, use your sales reps a little bit as well to help your cause. And quite often they might be the one that's coming out to cover the story. I've found in the last 5-6 years, for sure, that there's less and less reporters that are willing to come out to your location and cover the story. So this is why, writing a good press release is so important, because they may run it word for word without actually a reporter coming to interview you or talk to you. So that's important. And if they do run your press release in the newspaper, as an example, they won't give you credit. They'll put a reporter's name on it. And that's the thing you have to remember when you're sending out a press release. It's not like it's an editorial coming from you. You're putting it out there. And if it gets picked up, a reporter will put their name on it. So you have to, so don't be surprised if you see your press release, and hopefully you do see your press release word for word in the newspaper, but it's a reporter's name attached to it, because that's the reporter that picked up the story and has chosen to put it in the paper. So it's a good thing. So you can't be possessive over what you write in a press release. You write it and then you gift it to the local media with the hope that they are going to pick it up and use it. Any questions about that conversation? No? Okay. Let's go back to the slideshow then. Okay. So this is what we just touched on this a little bit, media relations. And I said that they go hand in hand. You need to write a good press release, but you also need to, work on developing a relationship with some of the local media if possible. So, you want them to trust you as a good news source. You can do that by ensuring any press release you send is well written and has no spelling errors and is grammatically correct. Going back to what we just talked about, how a local reporter might pick up your press release and put it in the newspaper, or quote you on the radio station. The reality is they're all very much understaffed these days. So they may skip over the press release and say, oh yeah, this looks good, and put it in the newspaper. And I'm sure you're like me, we've all seen spelling errors in the papers or in other places. And, some people may not notice them, but other people do. And, if you're sending in press releases that are, have spelling errors, although they're not grammatically correct, and a reporter puts it in and puts it in the paper, and it's your name and it's their name on it, and they suddenly take a lot of heat because there's a lot of spelling errors in it, you can imagine that that's not going to be a great way to build up a positive relationship with that reporter. What you want them to do is that when they see a press release coming from you, oh yeah, that's from the Queen West Chamber, they always send us interesting stuff. They don't send us a bunch of stuff that's not newsworthy. We know that when they send us something, it's worth taking a look at. And so that's kind of what you want to be able to do. You want to include contact information and make yourself available for an interview if needed. You really do want them to take the time to interview you if possible, because then it usually is a bigger story, and they'll put a bigger space for it in the paper, or they'll use a clip from you actually speaking on the radio. So you really do want them to contact you for an interview. A little note about that: if you should happen to get called from the media, we all use our cell phones right now as our main phones. And so, if the media call you and it's not a good time, maybe you're not in front of your computer, maybe you're outside running some errands, and you don't have all the information in front of you. Maybe you've got sponsors to thank, maybe you've got dates or addresses you need to give out. There's nothing wrong with saying, answer the call and just say, what, thank you for calling me. Can I call you back? Can I call you back in 15 minutes? Or can I call you back in 10 minutes? And that way it ensures that, number one, they know that you're answering the call and you're making yourself available for an interview, but it also gives you the ability to properly prepare for it. And especially if you're not used to talking to the media, you're not used to, speaking on air, if it's a radio station, they're going to be recording you. You really may want to just make sure that you've got your computer in front of you, you've got all the information you want to share, and be ready. So don't be afraid to ask them to call you back in 10 minutes, or can you call them back in 10 minutes or half an hour, or however much time you need. But don't leave them hanging too long, because if they've picked up the story and they're interested in running it, whether it's in the paper or on the radio station, they want it to be timely. So, can't say, well, can I get back to you in a couple of days? It really should be, within, a short period of time.
Suzanne, Tony
Yeah.
has a question there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. Suzanne, we've talked about grammar, correct spelling. To what reading level are you addressing most of your press release communications?
Well,
Is it grade 10 reading, or is it grade 12 reading levels? Because many people may be using words that they're fully familiar with in terms of meaning, but the reader, it may be above their reading level. So what do you generally do when you're sending out or composing a press release?
Well, that is a really good point, and people have got varying levels. I think the main thing that you have to remember is when you are writing it, write it in words that you would use every day. So use it in we kind of like say layman's language, right?
Yeah.
And if you're in an industry that maybe is a little more technical, you really need to, and I hate to use the term dumb it down, but you know what? You have to make it so that people can comprehend what you're saying. So if it is something really technical, you need to find a way to make it so the average person understands what you're talking about. If you're using terms that are maybe very familiar within your industry, but the general public wouldn't know what you're talking about, don't use them, or put an explanation after the term. Acronyms is another thing. If you're going to use an acronym, the very first time you use it, you actually write it out in long form and then put the acronym in brackets right after it. And then for the rest of the press release, you can use the acronym. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. We'll go back to the PowerPoint here. I think we've covered everything about that. So, how to tell your story to get attention. And this is really, where that headline comes into play. So once you have decided you have a noteworthy story to tell, you have to decide how you are going to tell your story. Just stating the facts is not a story. You have to tell people why this information is important or interesting. Why should they care about, the topic that you're talking to? And be careful of any spin that you add to the story. So the one, I've put a little definition there for spin. So spin is a contemporary term for a form of propaganda that relies on deceptive methods of persuasion in politics, business, and elsewhere. Spin is often characterized by exaggeration, euphemisms, inaccuracies, half-truths, and excessively emotional appeals. So that's kind of, so, a little bit of spin is not a bad thing, but, you want people to, and maybe as an example, let's use the charity barbecue again. If you're going to, let's say, be doing a open house at your business, and it's open to the general public, you've got someone to come and do a barbecue, and all the proceeds are going to get, given away to a charity. Just make sure, the amount of spin that you put in that is limited, because you really don't want to build up people's expectations and then they show up and they're disappointed because you've exaggerated what's going to be available. Maybe you're doing a small open house. Don't say, door prizes for everyone, and then you've got like 2 door prizes, right? So it's just the spin is something you have to manage and control and make sure that you're not really, exaggerating things, so that you build up people's expectations, and when they get there, they're disappointed. Or if you're going to include inaccuracies, you have to be careful. With the internet out there these days, people can check anything that you're saying. And again, just the excessively emotional appeals should be really contained. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're writing. We'll talk about the press release format. So press releases should always be written in the third person and follow a proper press release format. You need to be clear and concise. In most cases, your press release should be no more than 4 paragraphs, unless you really have some great news to share. Use a standard heading at the top of the page. And this can vary, but this is the heading that we use here at the Chamber of Commerce. We say for immediate release, you put who it's from, the date, and the release date. Maybe you're getting it out to the media ahead of time, but you actually don't want it to go live for a couple more days. As an example, sometimes we'll send things out locally for post media, which only comes out on Thursdays. The deadline to get your press releases into post media is Thursday for the following Thursday's newspaper. So you may send out a press release to them on a Thursday, hoping to get the story in the next week's paper, but you don't actually want it to go live on the radio stations or the online source for the post media until Monday or Tuesday of that week. So then you would use the date that you're releasing it. The date of the press release may be different than the release date. And then you're going to use a headline, one descriptive line in a title case. So make it a little bigger. You can bold it. You can underline it. So that's sort of your headline. And quite often when I'm sending a press release out to the media, I use that as my subject line. And I don't tend to send my press releases out as an attachment. I'll take the body, the written part of the press release, and just put it right into the email. So I'm not asking somebody in the newsroom to actually open an attachment. If I have any photos or anything or other information I want to include, I will do it as an attachment. But the actual body of the press release and my contact information and everything is all embedded right into the email. Okay, so going on to the press release format, paragraph 1. At the beginning of the first paragraph, insert the city where the news takes place in. You can bold this or put it in brackets. So if you're, depending on if your business is here in Quinte West, you could choose to say Quinte West, or you could say Trenton, or maybe you're in Frankfurt. So you can choose whichever sort of community name you feel best describes your business. If you're in a part of Prince Edward County that you would really like to, you could say Prince Edward County, or you might say Wellington, or, Picton, or a part of that bigger place. So it's really up to you where you want to, what you want to do there. We used to use Trenton a lot. We use Quinte West pretty exclusively now here at the Quinte West Chamber, but, do what's best for your business. In 1 or 2 sentences, you're going to write the main news or point of your press release. These can be longer sentences, but there should never be more than 3 in this paragraph. And you'll not be able to fit all your details in here, and that's okay. And you really want to think about doing short paragraphs as opposed to long paragraphs. People are not going to read a big long press release or a big long paragraph. So really break up the information you're trying to share into, 3 or 4 shorter paragraphs. In the second paragraph, this is where you're going to feed. This is what you should feed to every press outlet and every reporter. It's the who, it's the what, when, where, and why of your event, announcement, or rollout. This is what they're looking for when they read your press release. This is the details that the public who are reading the news story are going to want to know. And then between this and the paragraph above, the reporter should know everything they would need for a small blip piece. Of course, you want more exposure than that, so you provide more detail below. And in paragraph 2, it's also a great place to put in a strong quote, make it emotional, make it sell. You would, said, doing a little example here. Here's a great place to put a strong quote, make it emotional, make it sell, said your best spokesperson, and then you put the title and role of your organization. Then you make your spokesperson finish up in a second sentence, usually asking for some kind of action or change. So what I've put there is how you would actually write that out with your quote. You would put what you want to say, something really strong, and then you're going to put the person's name and the title. If you're the owner of your business, if you're the manager of your business, if you're media relations for your business, if you're an organization, you might have a president or a board chair that would be making that quote. And then that second part of the quote is usually just kind of something wrapping it up. So between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, you've actually got, enough information that a reporter could do a quick little news piece on it. Okay, and then you're going to go onto paragraph 3 and paragraph 4. If you've got more information to share. And the third paragraph is your details paragraph. It is here that you give background, stories, history, informational stats. This is where you paint a picture and bring in all the other stuff you want to know, you want people to know about your announcement. Sometimes you can put a second quote here, said another person, the title role at the event. This one also has a second part. And you can use someone who is helping you with the event or situation, or you can go for a layperson's quote. Make these good because sometimes the reporter will simply lift them directly from the press release for the story. And again, to use another example, if you are doing a charity barbecue and you're raising money to go to a charity, this would be a great place to put a quote from the charity, why they really appreciate the fact that, you're doing this charity barbecue, they're trying to raise, what they're trying to raise money for. So if you have somebody else that you want to include, this would be another place to do it. And then the fourth paragraph is your closing paragraph. And it focuses on the future, your contact information, and it can simply wrap up by looking ahead in some way. This is a very short paragraph and sometimes only one sentence. It doesn't have to be long. If you write a one-page press release, at the bottom of the copy, add 3 pound signs, the number 30 or the word end. In capital letters. These are abbreviations which signify the conclusion of the press release. So when you put any of those 3 words, symbols at the bottom of the writing, the reporter knows that that's the end of the actual press release. Everything that's written after that is just additional information for them, and it's not meant to be printed or used by the media. It's just information. And this is where you would add then your contact information. You can use the words, available for an interview. You would, put your full name, your title, if you're the business owner, business manager, whatever it is, and then a phone and an email. If I am attaching a photo with my press release, I will quite often put in capital letters right above the contact information, see photo attached or see photos attached. And that way it draws their attention to the fact that you have attached a photo. And in these days where reporters aren't necessarily always going to come out to your location, you being able to send them a really good quality photo means that they, you know, if it's a good photo and it's an interesting photo, they will run the photo with your press release, which is way better than just getting the written word printed. You really would love to have that photo attached as well. And then not everyone, a boilerplate won't refer to everybody, but a boilerplate is usually found at the end of the press release and briefly describes the company or organization related above. So we have a boilerplate for the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce. And it just kind of talks a little bit about our organization, how many members we have, we're part of the Ontario Chamber and the Canadian Chamber Network. You may not need a boilerplate. It will depend on your particular situation. And that's everything that I wanted to present to you this afternoon. Well, actually, it's this morning. It is a Friday, so it feels like it should be a Friday afternoon, but it's not. It's Friday morning. So we can definitely open it up if there's any other questions that have come up from the material that I presented today.